The October morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Davidson Elementary School in Charlotte, North Carolina, casting long golden rays across the polished hardwood floors. The autumn air carried the crisp scent of fallen leaves and the distant sound of school buses rumbling to a stop. Inside the bustling hallways, 8-year-old Riley Curry clutched her script with sweaty palms, her heart beating faster than a basketball dribbling down the court. "You've got this, sweetheart," her mother, Aisha, whispered, kneeling down to adjust Riley's bright yellow dress, the same shade as the sunflower she was portraying in the school's annual Harvest Festival play. The fabric rustled softly as Aisha smoothed out the petals sewn around the collar. "Remember what we practiced at home?" Riley nodded, but her usual confident smile seemed smaller today. She had inherited her father's competitive spirit, but stage fright was an entirely different opponent than any basketball game Stephen had ever faced. The school's multi-purpose room had been transformed into a makeshift theater, complete with handmade backdrops painted by parent volunteers and rows of folding chairs that seemed to multiply every time Riley peeked through the curtain. "There are so many people out there, Mama," Riley whispered, pressing her face against the cool wall backstage. Through the thin partition, she could hear the growing murmur of conversation as parents, grandparents, and siblings filled every available seat. Camera phones were already being positioned for the perfect shot, and the local news crew had even set up in the back, having caught wind that NBA superstar Stephen Curry would be in attendance. Mrs. Henderson, Riley's third-grade teacher, bustled around with a clipboard, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She had been teaching for over 20 years, but every school play still filled her with the same mixture of excitement and nervous energy. "Places, everyone! 5 minutes! Until curtain!" she announced in her cheerful teacher voice, though Riley could detect the slight tremor of anticipation underneath. The other children seemed less affected by the crowd. Marcus, playing the role of a scarecrow, was making funny faces at his little sister in the audience. Emma, the narrator, was confidently running through her lines one final time, but Riley felt like her stomach was doing somersaults, each flip more intense than the last. Stephen had arrived 20 minutes early, finding a seat in the third row with a clear view of the stage. He wore a simple navy sweater and jeans, trying to blend in despite the whispers and occasional phone cameras pointed in his direction. This was Riley's moment, not his, and he wanted nothing more than to be just another proud parent in the audience. Beside him, Aisha saved seats for the rest of the family, while baby Cannon slept peacefully in his carrier. "Daddy looks nervous too," Riley observed, peeking through the curtain one more time. And she was right. Stephen's hands were clasped tightly together, his foot tapping a subtle rhythm against the floor. He understood the pressure of performing in front of crowds, but watching his daughter face that same challenge brought out a protective instinct that no championship game had ever triggered. The school's old sound system crackled to life, and Principal Martinez's voice filled the room. "Welcome, families, to Davidson Elementary's annual Harvest Festival. Play, The Garden of Friendship. Our talented third graders have been working hard to bring you this special story about how different plants and flowers learn to grow together." As the lights dimmed and the burgundy curtains began to part, Riley took one last deep breath. The sweet scent of the flower costume mingled with the familiar school smell of chalk and cleaning supplies. Her opening scene was in just 3 minutes, and suddenly, those 3 minutes felt both like an eternity and not nearly enough time to prepare. The stage lights blazed to life, bright and warm, transforming the simple multi-purpose room into something magical. Riley could hear her heartbeat in her ears as she waited in the wings, watching Emma step confidently into the spotlight to begin the play's opening narration about a garden where every plant had something special to offer. The opening scenes flowed smoothly, with each young actor stepping into their roles with the endearing combination of nervousness and determination that only elementary school plays could provide. The audience responded with gentle laughter and encouraging applause, as a chorus of vegetables sang about working together, and a group of fruit trees shared their wisdom about growing strong roots. Then came Riley's cue. Mrs. Henderson gave her an encouraging nod from the wings, and Riley stepped forward onto the stage. The lights were brighter than she had expected during rehearsals, creating a wall of white that made it impossible to see individual faces in the audience. Instead, she was confronted with a sea of shadows and the overwhelming awareness that hundreds of eyes were focused directly on her. Her opening line was simple. "Hello, friends. I'm Sunny the Sunflower, and I'm here to share my light with all of you." She had practiced it dozens of times in her bedroom mirror, in the car on the way to school, even while brushing her teeth that morning. But now, standing center stage with the hot lights beating down and the absolute silence of anticipation surrounding her, the words simply vanished. Riley's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. The silence stretched on, punctuated only by the quiet hum of the stage lights and the occasional creak of a folding chair as someone shifted in their seat. Her fellow actors, positioned around the stage as various garden plants, looked on with concern and confusion. Emma, still serving as narrator, took a small step forward, ready to help if needed. In the audience, Stephen felt his heart clench. He recognized the look on his daughter's face, the same deer-in-headlights expression he had seen on rookie players during their first playoff game. The moment when the magnitude of the situation suddenly became overwhelming. His instinct was to jump up immediately, but Aisha placed a gentle hand on his arm, her eyes saying what they both knew. Sometimes you have to let your children find their own way through the difficult moments. But as the seconds ticked by, each one feeling like a minute to Riley, it became clear that this was more than just a momentary freeze. Riley's eyes were wide with panic, her small hands trembling at her sides. The bright yellow petals of her costume seemed to wilt as her confidence crumbled. A few whispers began to ripple through the audience, parents leaning toward each other with expressions of sympathy and concern. Mrs. Henderson started to move from the wings, her teacher instincts kicking in to rescue a struggling student. But before she could reach Riley, something in the girl's posture changed. Instead of looking straight ahead into the blinding lights, she turned slightly to the right, scanning the audience with desperate eyes. She was looking for something, or rather someone, who could anchor her in this moment of terror. And then she found him. Even through the stage lights and her tears of frustration, Riley's eyes locked onto her father's familiar face in the third row. Stephen was leaning forward slightly in his chair, his expression a mixture of encouragement and understanding. He didn't look embarrassed or impatient. He looked like a father who completely understood what his daughter was experiencing and was ready to help her through it. The moment their eyes met, Riley felt a small spark of recognition and comfort, but it wasn't enough to break through the wall of stage fright that had built up around her. Her lips moved slightly, as if she was trying to remember her lines, but still no words came. The silence in the auditorium was becoming deafening, and Riley could feel the weight of everyone's attention pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. Some of the other children on stage began to fidget, unsure whether they should help their classmate or wait for an adult to intervene. Marcus, the scarecrow, took a small step toward Riley, his own costume rustling with the movement. But even his presence couldn't break through the barrier that fear had constructed around her. Stephen's hands gripped the edge of his chair. Every paternal instinct was screaming at him to act, to step in and rescue his little girl from this moment of public vulnerability. But he also knew that how he handled this situation would teach Riley something important about facing her fears and finding strength in difficult moments. The audience waited, suspended in a collective breath, as Riley stood frozen in the spotlight, her yellow sunflower costume bright against the dark backdrop, her father's eyes the only anchor in a sea of overwhelming attention. Stephen couldn't watch his daughter struggle for another second. The sight of Riley's trembling figure under the harsh stage lights, her usual bright confidence replaced by visible panic, moved him to action. Without hesitation, he stood up from his seat, his 6'3" frame immediately drawing attention from every corner of the auditorium. "Riley!" he called out, his voice warm and steady, cutting through the heavy silence like a beacon. The acoustics of the multi-purpose room carried his words clearly to every corner, but his tone was intimate, as if he were speaking to her alone in their living room. "Hey, sweetheart, look at me. The entire audience turned to watch as Stephen stepped into the aisle, his movement fluid and purposeful. There was no embarrassment in his posture, no self-consciousness about the cameras that immediately swiveled in his direction. In this moment, he wasn't an NBA superstar or a public figure. He was simply a father responding to his child's need for support. Riley's eyes found his instantly, and for the first time since stepping onto the stage, her rigid posture began to soften slightly. Stephen smiled at her, the same encouraging grin he'd given her when she was learning to ride her bike, when she was nervous about her first swimming lesson, when she'd been scared to sleep without a nightlight. "You know what, Riley?" Stephen continued, his voice carrying easily through the silent room. "I get scared sometimes too. Even when I'm playing basketball in front of thousands of people, sometimes I feel exactly like you do right now." The honesty in his admission rippled through the audience. Parents nodded in recognition, many remembering their own moments of stage fright from childhood. The local news crew, who had come expecting to capture a routine school play appearance, now found themselves documenting something far more meaningful. "But, you know what helps me?" Stephen asked, taking another step closer to the stage. He was now standing at the front of the audience, close enough that Riley could see the familiar warmth in his eyes, the same expression that had comforted her through scraped knees and bad dreams. "I remember that everyone here is rooting for me, just like everyone here is rooting for you." Riley's grip on her costume loosened slightly. The tears that had been threatening to fall were still there, but they seemed less overwhelming now. Her father's presence had created a bubble of safety around her, even in the middle of the crowded auditorium. "And you know what else?" Stephen continued, his smile growing wider. "You've practiced this so many times at home. Remember how you used to perform your lines for Cannon when he was crying, and it would make him laugh? Remember how proud Mom and I were every single time?" A small smile began to tug at the corner of Riley's mouth. She did remember those moments, standing in the nursery, dramatically delivering her sunflower lines while her baby brother giggled from his crib. The memory felt warm and familiar, a sharp contrast to the cold fear that had been gripping her moments before. "So here's what we're going to do," Stephen said, his voice taking on the confident tone he used during team huddles, but softer, more gentle. "I'm going to stay right here, and you're going to look at me and pretend we're at home. Pretend it's just you and me and Cannon, and you're showing us how amazing Sonny the Sunflower can be." The audience was completely silent now, but it was a different kind of silence, not the heavy, expectant quiet of before, but a respectful hush, as if everyone understood they were witnessing something special. Even the other children on stage seemed to sense the shift in energy, standing a little straighter, ready to support their classmate. Stephen raised his hand and gave Riley a small wave, the same gesture he'd perfected for cameras after game-winning shots, but this time it was entirely for her. "I believe in you, baby girl. You've got this." Riley took a deep breath, her small chest rising and falling as she gathered her courage. She looked directly at her father, drawing strength from his unwavering support, and finally found her voice. "Hello, friends." Riley's voice rang out clear and strong, cutting through the silence like sunshine breaking through clouds. "I'm Sonny the Sunflower, and I'm here to share my light with all of you." The words came not just from memory, but from a place of renewed confidence. As she delivered her opening line, Riley's posture straightened, her yellow petals seeming to bloom around her as she stepped fully into her character. The transformation was immediate and remarkable. The scared little girl from moments before had found her inner strength, and was now commanding the stage with natural charisma. Stephen remained standing in the aisle, his proud smile radiating throughout the auditorium. He gave Riley an encouraging thumbs up, and she responded with a brilliant grin that could have powered the stage lights. The connection between father and daughter was palpable, creating an atmosphere of love and support that enveloped the entire room. "You see," Riley continued, her voice growing stronger with each word, "a sunflower always turns toward the light, no matter where it comes from. And today, I can see light everywhere I look." She gestured toward the audience, her movement graceful and confident, and for the first time, she seemed to truly see the faces looking back at her. all friendly, all encouraging, all rooting for her success. The other young actors responded to Riley's renewed energy like flowers opening to the sun. Marcus the Scarecrow straightened his floppy hat and delivered his next line with enthusiasm. Emma the narrator beamed with relief and pride for her classmate. The entire cast seemed to feed off Riley's transformation, elevating their own performances in the process. As the play continued, Riley moved around the stage with growing confidence, her natural performer's instincts taking over. She had indeed inherited more than just her father's competitive spirit. She had his ability to rise to the occasion when it mattered most, to find strength in moments of pressure, and to turn challenges into opportunities to shine. The audience was completely captivated, but not just by the play itself. They were witnessing something deeper, a demonstration of unconditional parental support, a lesson in facing fears, and the beautiful moment when a child discovers her own resilience. Phone cameras that had initially been raised to capture a celebrity sighting were now recording something far more precious, a family moment that spoke to every parent in the room. When Riley delivered her final monologue about how sunflowers help other plants grow by providing light and encouragement, her eyes found Stephen's once more. "And that's what friends do," she said, her voice carrying a wisdom that seemed beyond her 8 years. "They help each other find their light, especially when it's hard to see." The parallel wasn't lost on anyone in the audience. Stephen had done exactly that, helped his daughter find her light when fear had temporarily dimmed it. And in doing so, he had shown everyone present what true parenting looked like. Not fixing problems for your children, but empowering them to overcome challenges themselves. As the final curtain fell and the young actors took their bows, the applause was thunderous, but the loudest cheers came from Stephen, who was now openly wiping tears from his eyes as he celebrated his daughter's triumph. Riley ran to the edge of the stage and blew him a kiss, which he caught dramatically and pressed to his heart, eliciting laughter and more applause from the delighted audience. Later, as families gathered in the school hallway for photos and congratulations, the local news reporter approached Stephen for a comment. "Mr. Curry, that was an incredible moment of parenting. What went through your mind when you saw Riley struggling up there?" Stephen wrapped his arm around Riley, who was still glowing with pride and excitement, her sunflower costume slightly wilted but her smile radiant. "You know, basketball has taught me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is show up for your teammates when they need you most. But being a dad has taught me that sometimes showing up means stepping back and letting your kids find their own strength. Riley didn't need me to rescue her. She just needed to know I was there." He looked down at his daughter, who was chatting excitedly with her classmates about the play. "She's got everything she needs inside her already. Sometimes she just needs a reminder to let it shine." The video of Stephen's encouragement and Riley's recovery would indeed go viral within hours, shared across social media platforms, with captions praising both the father's support and the daughter's resilience. But for the Curry family, the real victory wasn't measured in views or likes. It was in the moment Riley discovered that she could face her fears and find her light, even when the stage seemed too bright and the audience too large. As they walked out of Davidson Elementary that autumn afternoon, the Carolina sun casting long shadows across the parking lot, Riley slipped her small hand into her father's much larger one. "Daddy," she said, looking up at him with eyes that sparkled with newfound confidence, "next time I'm scared, will you help me remember that I'm brave?" Stephen squeezed her hand gently, his heart full of pride and love. "You don't need me to remember that, sweetheart. You are brave. Today you proved that to yourself. But I'll always be right there cheering you on, no matter what stage you're on." The sunflower petals rustled softly in the October breeze as they walked toward their car, a father and daughter who had shared a perfect moment of growth, courage, and unconditional love. The kind of moment that reminds us all why family bonds are the strongest force of all.